Hey everyone, Jason here, and welcome back to Jason's O-Gauge Trains. Today I'll be doing a long overdue review of one of my most favorite locomotives in my collection, and what many would consider to be one of the most iconic engines ever made in real life, or to be modeled in O-scale. It is, of course, the MTH Premier Restoration Big Boy number 4014, equipped with Protosound 3.0. It's big, it's badass, and it's packed with features. And we're going to check it out today on Jason's O-Gauge Trains. The real Union Pacific Big Boy 4014 was built in 1941 by the American Locomotive Company, or ALGO for short. It's what's known as a Ford 884 steam locomotive, which means it has 4 pilot wheels up front, followed by 8 drive wheels, another set of 8 drive wheels, and 4 trailing trucks under the cab. It's also what's known as an articulated steam engine, which is a locomotive with 1 or more engine units that can move independently of the main frame. Articulation is what allows the operation of large locomotives that would otherwise be too large to negotiate a railroad's tight curves. When I run this engine around the layout in a minute, you'll see that articulation in action as this spoiler swings out when it goes around the curves. The 4014 ended its revenue service in 1959 and was donated to the Railway and Historical Locomotive Society in 1961, then changed hands to the Rail Giants Train Museum in Pomona, California. Union Pacific acquired 4014 in 2013 and began the restoration efforts to put it back in operation condition. The restoration was completed in 2019 and put into excursion services that same year. The Big Boy model you see in front of you was cataloged in MTH's 2020 Volume 2 catalog, which was the last catalog during the Mike Wolf era of MTH. It was delivered in October of 2020, and I brought mine home around that same time. I pre-ordered and purchased mine from Stockyard Express in Oberlin, Ohio, which is one of my favorite train stores. The MTH item number is 20-3775-1, and it retailed for $1,699.99. However, if you go through a good MTH authorized dealer and you pre-order, you can usually get a bit of a discount off of MSRP. Now, a couple of quick notes. This is not the Mike Wolf Big Boy that was announced in January of 2021. That Big Boy has yet to be delivered. However, the Big Boy you see in front of you will be exactly the same as the Mike Wolf Big Boy. The only difference is that the Mike Wolf Big Boy will come with a signed certificate of authenticity from Mike Wolf. So if you ordered one of the Mike Wolf Big Boys, the locomotive you see in front of you will have the same gloss finish, same sound set, and same features. And on another note, since my Big Boy was delivered over a year ago, it may be very hard for you to find one, at least one that's being sold at MSRP. So your best bet is to grab one of the Mike Wolf Big Boys once they deliver later this year. Okay, with all the disclaimers out of the way, let's focus on this beautiful model next to me. There are 2 things that immediately stand out. One is the sheer size. It's called a Big Boy for a reason. This is by far the biggest locomotive in my fleet. It measures 35 inches in length. That's 3 inches longer than my Chesapeake and Ohio Allegheny. And speaking of size, you will need a minimum 072 curve to operate this engine. And trust me, that is non-negotiable. The second thing that stands out is the high gloss finish. This is the first time MTH has put a gloss finish on a Big Boy, and it was done for a very good reason. It's because this is the Restoration Big Boy, meaning that it is modeled after the real Union Pacific 4014 Big Boy that was restored and put into excursion service in 2019. And that engine has a gloss finish, so it's modeled after the real 4014, making this gloss finish true to the prototype. Now, I'm sure someone will point out that MTH's model shouldn't have a gloss tender. That's only true if you're modeling the Big Boy when it first came out of the shop for its first test runs after being restored. At that time, the Big Boy's tender wasn't finished, so they borrowed Union Pacific Challenger 3985's tender for test runs. Lionel's Restoration Big Boy models that prototype, and does not have a gloss finish tender. There is nothing wrong with Lionel's model. In fact, I think Lionel did a great job with their Restoration Big Boy. It just depends on which prototype you're trying to model. Once the real Big Boy was ready for its 2019 excursions, the gloss finish tender had been completed, and that's what we're modeling here. Let's look at some of the details on this model. Starting at the front, we have a nice LED headlight, lighted number boards and marker lights, a painted bell, MU hoses, and the snowplow rotates to reveal a dummy coupler. This model does come with an O-gauge knuckle coupler if you wanted to get rid of the dummy coupler and double head this engine. I personally never use it because, in my opinion, why would you ever run something else in front of this beautiful model? And if we look closely, you'll see the name Big Boy written on the boiler. It said that when these locomotives were built and came out of the shops in the 1940s, a factory worker wrote Big Boy in chalk on the boiler, and the name Big Boy simply stuck. So when Union Pacific restored the 4014, they recreated this chalk writing, and MTH made sure to put it on their model as well. Moving back to the middle of the locomotive, we see lots of nice details in the running gear, and we also see one of my favorite features, which I've never seen on an MTH model until this point, which is the ground lights. There are 3 ground lights on each side of the locomotive, which illuminate when it's stationary. Once the locomotive starts moving, the lights turn off. I've seen this on top-of-the-line Lionel models, but never MTH, so this was a nice touch. And moving to the top of the locomotive, we see another feature that's new for MTH models, which is the smoking whistle. Now MTH has included smoking whistles on their G-gauge models, and Lionel has been including it on their O-scale steamers for years. But this is a first for MTH O-scale Premier steamers. To fill the smoking whistle, you very carefully remove the whistle itself, which is held in place by a magnet. I then use this needle smoke applicator and squirt a few drops in, and simply put the whistle back in place. The whistle steam can be turned on or off using a soft key on MTH's DCS command control system, and as you see, it works quite well. This model is also equipped with a quillable whistle. You will need MTH's DCS system to use this feature, but it's a really nice touch. And if you're wondering why that whistle sounds so good, well, it's because MTH took sound recordings directly from the real 4014 to use in this model. How cool is that? The cab of the engine is nicely detailed. There are 3 cab figures, illuminated firebox, a cab light, and painted and detailed equipment. It is also worth mentioning that there is a drop plate that connects the cab to the tender, as well as a roof vent that opens and closes. Finally, we get to the tender. And as you'll notice, there is no coal. What's up with that? Well, when Union Pacific restored the 4014, they decided to convert it to oil burning instead of coal burning. So this tender is essentially a big tank for oil and water. Even without a coal load, this tender is still highly detailed. Towards the back of the tender, these 3 hatches all pop open, 2 of which reveal the sound and smoke controls in case you're running it in conventional mode without MTH DCS. And the rear of the tender has a red marker light on top with a nice white LED reverse light when it's backing up. The tender is also where the speaker is located, which is standard on most O-scale steam models. Okay, now it's time to fire the big boy up and run it around the layout. I have added 2 auxiliary water tenders behind 4014 to make it more like the 2019 Excursion. These tenders are made by MTH but are not included with this model. I purchased them separately on eBay, and I'm a bit ashamed to say what I paid for them. But I'll also be pulling coal cars instead of passenger cars, as I do not have any UP passenger cars, at least not yet, so you'll have to cut me some slack there. Okay, let's fire the 4014 up and see it in action. So there you have it, the MTH Premier Union Pacific Restoration Big Boy number 4014. This is easily one of my favorite locomotives in my collection and is a ton of fun to operate. And if you add one to your collection, it will easily be a favorite for any visitors to your layout. I hope you enjoyed this review. If so, please give the video a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Feel free to ask questions in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.